A plume of fragrant smoke wafted through the air from Death's cigar. I stood there dumbfounded. Charlie had mentioned the other watchers, but never that they were siblings. Death was Charlie's sister. Death was Charlie's sister. You'd think that would be something a person mentions. She just smirked at me some more before exhaling some smoke rings into my face and departing. Frazzle doesn't even begin to describe how I was feeling. I stumbled into my house to find it a hub of activity. Little shrine guardians skittered about on paws and claws. Raven scowled at me as he righted the overturned couch. "Mistress, you're back!" Rabbit hopped over to me and reached up a paw to my hand. "Are you okay?" I could only stare down at him. They had righted all the wrongs in my house. If only they could do that with my life. The wall was repaired. 2 doll-like spirits, stacked one on top of the other, painted the fresh sheetrock to match the rest of the wall. An amber-colored wolf swept the floor, while a little gray tabby held the dustpan. The cheerful smiles painted onto all their little white masks seemed surreal. How could anyone be happy at a time like this? Hurt and mild irritation tickled at the back of my mind. Raven glared some more, opened his beak as if to speak, and promptly snapped it closed with a His black beady eyes held so much contempt. "Whatever it is," I glowered, "just say it." "How dare you? How dare you?" His feathers ruffled at me as he put his taloned fists on his hips. "You would use those hateful words with him. You would call him an offense. He has been nothing but kind to you. He actually cares for you and your kin, and you would toss him aside in a moment of rage." He had worked himself into a fury. Ravens began to caw outside the house. He was right, though, and totally justified in his anger and hurt. I had been cruel to Luke. I owed many people apologies. "I'm sorry, Raven." I looked around the room at all the beings who repeatedly came to save my ass. "I'm so sorry, everyone." I could feel tears threatening to spill down my cheeks. "I've been horrible to all of you." "Mistress," Kit appeared from the kitchen, "we understand and forgive you." The little ones all nodded their heads in agreement. Raven still glared, but his angry stance was replaced by one of sadness. His feathers unfluffed and pressed tightly against his head as he also nodded. "Mistress, Master Luke is refusing treatment for his wounds. Perhaps if you try, while you apologize, he will allow it." She tossed a first aid kit to me. Raven sighed. "He's in the young prince's room." Luke sat in the middle of Dante's bedroom, a broken man. His knees pulled up to his chest, face in his hands, wings half wrapped around himself. The picture of a weeping angel. It was easy to forget, looking at him now, that he was the Lucifer, the angel cast from heaven, halo and heart torn to pieces by his own father. He looked up at me wearily as I entered the room and knelt down beside him. "I'm sorry." The words came out softer than I meant. "I didn't mean what I said. I choked on my words and the tears began to flow. "I know, Moira, I know. Our boy is missing, and my best friend is nowhere to be found." A single glittering tear ran down his swollen cheek as he reached out and pulled me to him. "Where's Rory?" His voice was muffled by my hair, and a sob escaped my throat. "He's gone. Skuld took him." He pushed me away and looked deep in my eyes. "Why?" "Death tried to take him. Skuld was protecting him. Luke, Death is Charlie's sister." His non-swollen eye blinked at me in confusion. He cocked his head to the left and then the right. "What?" Luke was angry, very angry. In his rage, he repeated my steps. First to the tree to scream at Erd and Dondi, then through town, trying to hunt down Charlie or Scold or a clue to Dante's whereabouts. And just like me, he came up empty-handed. But unlike me, he left town afterward. He and Raven were going hunting. I don't know what or who they were hunting, but they were out for blood. I spent the next day staring at the tree, watching Rory and Dante's names and destinies. I also accepted many casseroles from curious townsfolk, hoping for a bit of juicy gossip. I could write an entire book on the horrors of some of those casseroles. Mostly, I just sat on the porch holding Rory's bear and Dante's blanket and staring off into nothing. Rory was only 3, and even though he wasn't old enough to understand, I hadn't even gotten the chance to tell him I had adopted him. I tried to remember the last time I had told him I loved him. I wished for them to be home, for more snuggles and blanket forts, for one more PB&J with a side of giggles. That night I dreamed again, the awful dream that plagued me during my pregnancy. I walked through the now familiar war-torn fields filled with the dead. The acrid stench of gunpowder and the sickly, sweet scent of death again filled my nostrils. Ash drifted from the sky and hung in the air with the dense fog that surrounded me. Whispers echoed and hinted at the destruction wrought by the wrath of my child. "Look what we've become," sang the corpses at my feet as their mangled bodies writhed in pain. "Your foolishness stole our endings. There is no heaven or hell anymore. We must drag ourselves through this desolate place for eternity. Oh, Mother of Ruin, why did you give life to death?" I awoke with a start, covered in sweat, with a scream caught in my throat. Uncle Roar was once again sitting on my bed. "It was just a nightmare." He smiled softly, most of his face carefully hidden in the shadows that danced in the moon's soft light. "It will be over soon." "Uncle Roar, why are you here?" I reached for him, but he caught my hands and held them in his own. "It's not what you think, Moira. I have to go. Just know Dante is safe." My body went rigid. "You took him?" "Yes." "Why? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you tell me?" "I have to go." He got up and all but ran from the room. I bolted after him, but he was already gone. I now knew who had stolen my son, though I didn't know why. I crawled back into my bed with the bear and the blankie and cried my heart out. How was Uncle Roar back from the dead? Why had he taken Dante? And why did I feel that my son still wasn't safe? I was on the porch when Luke returned the next morning. His wounds were gone, and his eyes held a deadly glint. A massive double-headed axe swung over his shoulder. The black metal gleamed in the dawn, blazing red demonic script etched into its blades. He grinned and hefted the axe off his shoulder and propped it on the earth. An ever-growing ring of singed soil burned around the weapon. "We're chopping down that blasted limb." "No! No! No!" Erd and Dondi's voices sounded in unison with mine. Luke looked at me in surprise. "Scold could be hiding Rory in there. I won't risk losing him." "And what of our son?" "Uncle Roar has him." He shared a look with Raven that clearly said, "She's lost it." "Moira, your uncle passed and you know it." "I know." My voice was whinier than I meant. "I've been seeing him around town, and sometimes he wakes me from nightmares." Luke's eyebrow raised, clearly suspicious. "Last night, he told me he had Dante." "Moira, that's not possible." "I don't know how he's back. I just know that he is." "No, you don't understand. It's not possible. He's dead. While his energy is still here, always with you in that sense, he can't be here in a corporeal form. It's just not possible. Besides, Charlie has his soul. He swung the axe back up over his shoulder. Charlie? Wait, so if it's not Uncle Roar? Fear began to pepper my confusion. It's someone parading around in his skin to get close to you, Raven replied, looking troubled. Wrung her hands and stood in front of the tree protectively. Verdandi examined Luke, eyes filled with challenge. The soft breeze was warm and embraced us all. It was going to be a beautiful day. As if sensing my thought, Dondi raised her face to the rising sun and smiled. You'll not touch Yggdrasil with that axe, she proclaimed boldly. Odin himself would not allow a bastard child as yourself to harm the mighty tree. Luke bristled at her words and brandished the axe. He swung it up high into the air and slammed it down towards the trunk. The leaves above began to sing as the tree vibrated angrily. He wrenched the axe out, tearing at the bark near Dante's name. Stop! I screamed and ran the few steps towards Luke. Please, our son! He hesitated, looking down towards the name scrawled at the base. By Odin's beard, quivered Erd in fear, but she wasn't looking at us or the axe. The earth trembled beneath us as the sound of hysterical laughter filled my ears. I turned, searching for the source of the grating noise, to find Mr. Time swinging a large scythe. Death stood behind him wearing a nasty grin. 3 things happened simultaneously. Erd and Verdandi screamed, Luke jumped away, and a figure lunged from the tree and tackled me while screaming, Look out! I found myself pinned between the fake Uncle Roar and the cold, hard ground. The tip of the scythe whizzed through the air above us, slicing through nothing with a hiss. Mr. Time cackled maniacally and swung the scythe again. As we rolled away, the scythe met Luke's axe with a loud clang. Cronus, stop! Stop! Shrieked the sisters in unison. Who are you? Where is my son? I screamed at the man. Finally, in the light of day, I could clearly see the man now beneath me. I straddled him and wrapped my small hands around his neck. A scar bisected his left eyebrow, running from his hairline to his cheekbone. He would not meet my gaze. He rolled us away again as the scythe dug into the ground where we previously laid. Now above me, he easily batted away my hands. Why would you do this? I begged. Raven screamed and was thrown into the tree by Death. A few of his onyx feathers fluttered down with peridot leaves as he pushed off and flew at her again. Luke tried to swing his axe at Cronus, only to have it ripped from his grasp with a pointing of Death's long fingers. The imposter was pulled off of me and hung in the air by nothing. He struggled fruitlessly, choked by an invisible hand. Cronus giggled with glee. Where is the boy? Give me the boy! He struck the hanging man. I sat on the ground staring at Dante's kidnapper. Up his arms and on every bit of visible flesh but his face were tattooed and branded Nephilim markings. While he resembled my beloved uncle, his features exposed by the bloody dawn light, he was, without a shadow of a doubt, not Uncle Roar. Luke embedded the axe in Death's back while she was momentarily distracted by Raven. She roared in anger and yanked it from between her shoulder blades. Her strangely sharp and beautiful features began to shift and change. The skin around her face decayed and slowly dripped down, revealing a bloody skull beneath. The whites of her eyes turned abysmal black, and her hair fell out in wet chunks, falling to the ground with sickening plops. Her bony fingers, now bone white, grew long and sharply pointed. She wrenched Luke from the sky above her and dug her clawed hands into his wings and pulled. He cried out in pain as his wings were slowly being torn from his back. She froze Raven mid-strike with a single terrifying look. Cronus dropped his scythe and began to pummel the fake. Where is the child? Every growled word was punctuated with a blow. Erd and Verdandi cowered behind the tree, praying to whatever god would listen. The imposter reached out towards Death and shouted strange words. The palm of his hand split open with another Nephilim rune. Death stopped in her tracks and moved her head jerkily towards him. Her lidless eyes filled with rage, and she opened her mouth in a silent scream. He looked towards me, his deep brown eyes meeting my own. "Run!" he called out hoarsely. I knew those beautiful eyes better than my own. My stomach lurched to my mouth, and my heart pounded in agony. I was raising Cronus' scythe above my head before I even realized I had moved from my spot on the ground. It was heavy and clumsy in its flight, but it found its way. I drove it deep into Cronus' back. It sliced through muscle and bone like butter. Both men fell to the ground, and I shoved Cronus off the man beneath him. The scythe had been too true. While it had found its mark with Cronus, it had also buried itself deep into the warm, brown-eyed man. How? Why? Tears flowed freely. In my pain, I momentarily forgot about Dante. Because I love you. Deep crimson blood burbled from his lips. No. I told you this wouldn't end well. A swirling bubble of light encased me and the man as the familiar voice spoke. You always say that, Charwie. He gasped and pressed a bloody letter into my hand as he caressed my face with the other. I held him in my arms and sobbed, begging him to stay. Rory, how? I rocked him as I watched the life leave his eyes. I sobbed over the grown body of my little brother. Charlie frowned and then turned towards Death and Luke, still locked in frozen battle. Fear filled Death's bleeding eyes. Leave, sister. You got what you wanted, he growled. She opened her mouth to protest, but Charlie cut her off. Leave! His voice boomed and shook the earth around us. She flickered and vanished. Luke dropped to his knees as Raven rushed to his aid. I wailed and sobbed as I rocked the lifeless body held tightly in my arms. Charlie, I gasped. He knelt down and closed Rory's eyes. I promised I wouldn't interfere. But Charlie, I keened. The letter will explain all, sweet Moira. I'm so sorry. He took my brother from my arms and began to walk away. The swirling cosmic light surrounding me became a bright bubble resting in my lap. When it popped, Dante appeared and began to wail and whimper with me. I held his tiny body to my chest and sobbed. Dante! Luke cried out as Raven helped the severely wounded fallen angel towards us. I reached over and traced Rory's name in the bark. His destiny had finally appeared. Looking towards Erd and Dondi, I asked, What does it say? They both smiled down at me softly. Shaper of Destiny. I watched broken-heartedly as his name disappeared from the tree. Look again, dear child. Verdandi pointed at the empty spot as Rourke Kincade reappeared with swirling script around it. I looked towards him in confusion. Skuld stepped from the tree with a tear-streaked face as Luke finally made it to us. He was bruised, battered, and bloody. He could barely move his arms from the damage inflicted by death, but still he reached for his half-son. Charlie stood a ways off, laying Rory to rest beneath a lone weeping willow. Moima? My head jerked toward Skuld. Rory's chubby 3-year-old face peered out from behind her. I just sat there in shock. Charlie appeared and scooped up little Rory and nuzzled him. He plopped down beside me and gently placed Rory in my lap. I know you're confused. When you are ready, read the letter. We sat beneath Yggdrasil and wept. A demon, a fallen angel and his son, a watcher, and 2 small mortals. Cronus's body had disappeared and the tree began to fade away. Only our bloody bodies, The axe and the scythe were left as proof of the battle we had won. Those and the fresh grave hidden beneath the boughs of the weeping willow. The letter was stiff with dried blood and simply labeled, "To Moira, from Rory." My hands began to shake, and tears fell as I slowly opened and read the letter within. My dearest sister, in my first life, you died fighting Cronus. The last thing you saw was little Dante eaten alive. In the years that followed, Cronus, now charged with Dante's powers, waged war with Zeus, trying to regain his throne. The seas boiled and the earth burned. The heavens were ripped from the skies and hell torn asunder. Cronus's thirst for power awoke desperate needs in other gods. The war spilled out onto human soil. Mortals and gods fought side by side. Luke got caught up in the war, trying to avenge both you and his only son. He fell, a savage beast, blood-soaked and driven by rage. Even your friend Faust got involved. She rode into battle with her harbinger by her side, begrudgingly leading a massive army of mortals and immortals alike. She fought bravely, guns a-blazing. Charlie raised me, so I would never forget the woman who loved me so dearly. He would often show me his memories of you. I was too small when I lost you to remember you on my own. Without you, he struggled with his addiction. He terrified all those in his path. He broke immortals and men alike. Their souls turned dark, and they wrought madness in an already chaotic world. I watched all that I knew be destroyed. Amidst the bloody war, Ragnarok began. Before the earth could be drowned in the healing waters, I stole into Yggdrasil and found the Norns. I stole the tapestry of destiny and rewove it. I thought if I could go back and stop Cronus from eating Dante, I could stop the end of the world. It worked, but not like I thought. I thought I would start over as a child. Instead, I was thrown, as a grown man of 56, back to the few days before your death, a time when I already existed as a child. First, I petitioned Zeus for help. The mighty god laughed me off. I begged him to at least check on his hateful father. When he discovered Cronus's evil plan was indeed real, he struck you both dead with a bolt of his lightning. I could only watch in horror as little Dante survived, only to be devoured by Cronus. The smaller me cried and wailed next to your corpse. Luke and Charlie raged. Once again, war rocked Mount Olympus and spilled down into our world. I was tortured to death for my efforts by Hades himself. The next time, I was better prepared. Having grown up amidst the wars that ravaged the land, with nightmares of the tortures I endured and watching your life snuffed out before my very young eyes, I was wiser for it. This time, I was able to save you, but not Dante. The war started again. You and Faust joined forces with and fought as Valkyrie. You are magnificent, dear sister. You are stronger than you'll ever know, more fierce than even Athena herself. I was 12 when you fell in battle, 18 when I snuck once again into Yggdrasil. This time, I begged the Norns to teach me how to weave. In another reincarnation, I managed to save Dante, but not you. Being raised by Luke and Charlie, without you, Dante lost his humanity. He was not good or kind. Because of Luke, he despised the gods. Because of Charlie, he saw humans as nothing more than mere playthings. This time, he killed the heavens and hell himself. There was nowhere for the souls of the dead to go, so they wandered the world in a rage, clawing at the souls of the living, hoping once more to feel alive. Anubis ended my adult life that time, tearing me limb from limb before he slowly crushed my skull. In one life, I'm ashamed to say, I killed Dante myself. You were never the same. You were still strong and loving, but you didn't smile as much. Your laugh didn't ring out as often. I watched as you raised the young version of me. I longed to beg your forgiveness. The world was saved, but I was a monster. I couldn't take the guilt. The next time I went back, I found Faust. Not much of the book remained, but enough that we were able to unlock its secrets. I covered myself in the scripts, gaining new stolen powers. A human body is not meant to wield that power. It slowly and painfully kills me every time I use it, but it has been helpful in the many times I have fought in the wars. Over and over I went back. Each time my adult form died, my memories were passed on to my child form's soul. I'd grow up with strange dreams and nightmares, never knowing they were memories until the time was right. And every time I failed, I knew the burden I left to my young self was heavy. Like Atlas, I bear the weight of the world on my shoulders. I'm not sure when I attracted Death's attention. She's chased me for many lifetimes and many mistakes. She's finally caught me in her cold gaze, and it frightens me, sister. I fear this may be my last chance. If I don't write everything this time, not only will she end me, the adult me, the man that's lived through terrible wars and devastating losses, but she may take the Rory you know, the cheerful boy who laughs and sings and dances in the rain with you. He has yet to know pain and loss. How I envy him. I don't want him to bear the same scars on his body or his heart, yet he may never have a chance. For hundreds of lives, I tried over and over to fix the world. After hundreds of failures, I realized you are the linchpin. Without you, everything falls apart. Or maybe I am being selfish. I miss you. You share your heart indiscriminately. I'm hoping your love can save Dante, and by that, save us all. I have broken many rules. I have marked my body with forbidden runes. I have forged deals in blood with wrathful gods long forgotten. I have lived the many futures and stolen the past. I have died hundreds of deaths. Now, death comes for me. She is not like the simple reapers that guide souls to their rightful places. Once she takes me, I will cease to exist. Forgive me, Moira. Forgive me for all the pain I have caused you and will cause you still. I must take your son. I will hide him and protect him. We will never be far from you. When it is safe, I will return him to you and turn myself over to death. I love you, Moima. R. I sobbed as I finished reading the letter and pulled little Rory into my arms. Charlie watched the setting sun in silence. I passed the letter to Luke as he cradled Dante. Later that night, we placed flowers on the unmarked grave beneath the willow. When I nuzzled my sweet boys, with tears running down my face, Rory reached up and placed his hands on my cheeks. As if he knew the pain in my heart, his sweet voice whispered out, "Don't cry, Moima. I'm still here."